And now for the summing up, could I please welcome back to the podium Professor Frank Rennie for the affirmative team.
I think you'll agree with me, ladies and gentlemen. It was a rather one-sided debate. We had 6 people advocating for OER and none against. That to me is self-obvious, and it's not reinventing the wheel. The strengths of this are in its ability to spread and to save effort, to save time. Over time, we'll begin to whittle down the less good items and to raise up the better items. There may well be a whole range of different repositories. I hope there are. But by their nature, by their essence, by their philosophy, they are designed to share. And that sifting out process will actually demonstrate to us which are the good ones and which are the bad ones. I look forward to the time when there will be many, many millions of OER. They'll be labelled better, we'll find them better, and we'll feel no shame or compulsion in using other people's work to illustrate our good ideas. OER is at the tip of the iceberg. My advice to you is jump on the iceberg. Thank you.
And moving back up to the podium from the negative team, the leader of the negative team, Professor Martin Weller, for his summing up.
Okay, I think my colleagues, as much as I respect and admire them, are a bit confused. They seem to think OERs equal the web, Web 2.0, and social networks. Now, OERs are a very specific thing, and they're being greedy and trying to have everything under that label now. I think, to take Frank's point, democratisation, yeah, sure, I'm all for democratisation, but then so would be flying out an individual tutor to everyone who demands one. That doesn't mean it's an approach we can do. Cost, I kind of felt like being a pantomime villain there and shouting, when you said it's cheaper, I said, oh, no, it isn't, it's more expensive. Speed, I think as Frank suggested, only geologists understand the speed of change in education. So, for instance, JISC, in my country, we have an organisation called JISC. They've now taken 8 years to try and get their repository up and running. It didn't take Wikipedia and SlideShare that long. Trust, I think trust is a good issue, but that's got nothing to do with OERs. Trust you build through networks, through Twitter and through blogs and things. That's not OERs. That's what I mean about trying to have everything under your banner. And the best thing since the book, I'd agree, the web is the best thing since the book, but OERs aren't. So, and I think Mohammed had a very good point. We've had all this argument before. We call them learning objects then, and we spent ages and lots of money building repositories that no one used, and then we decided, we'll call them OERs instead. And I think it's interesting that all of the team used photos and photo sharing as an example of OERs. They're not OERs. Photos, that's Flickr. That's what other people do. And OERs are a very specific approach to sharing resources. And the idea of learning communities, I think all those examples we had are kind of very interested parties. So it's universities talking to universities in a very kind of small clique. So what you get is a kind of echo chamber. All these people going around saying, OERs are great, yes, and they all agree with each other. And none of these things are like curriculum, those things are very nice, but they're nothing compared to Wikipedia. So this idea that it's us who should be leading this charge is kind of undermined, I think. And I think that this idea of lack of reuse, David Wiley, who's one of the big OER proponents himself, says he can't find any evidence for reuse, and he talks about dark reuse in some way. We used to talk about dark matter because we knew there had to be all this stuff going on. And I think evangelists think there must be this reuse going on, but they can't point a finger at it. So I think we need to understand, so things like Facebook and Twitter are different to OER, and we shouldn't be mixing those things up. One of my good friends on blogs, Scott Leslie, did an excellent post last year. He talked about, he sits in lots of meetings where in education where people talk about sharing, but then they don't actually do much sharing. They need memorandums of understanding, they need to create a repository, they need all the other things. And he compared that with his everyday life online, when he goes online, and between bloggers and on Twitter, where people are just sharing all the time. So to sum up, I think sharing small stuff is great. So I'd say educators sharing stuff, yes, but education leading the way on sharing in OERs, no, we don't do it very well. Little OERs I talked about yesterday, yes. Big OER projects, no. Web 2, yes, but OER as the approach to doing it, no. And aggregation, yes. So putting together lots of different things, good. But adaptation, taking big chunks of thing and trying to adapt them to your environment, no, too costly. So in conclusion, I think sharing is good, but OERs aren't the way to do it.
Thank you very much, Professor Martin. Well, summing up for the negative team. Now, I'm going to ask the judges to tally up, have their discussions if they need to. But in the meantime, could I please have a cordless mic moving through the audience? And please feel free, colleagues in the audience, to ask questions of either team. I'm sure you have some burning questions. I saw Vilimaka grinning there, and maybe no questions today, really. You must have questions. So please feel free to ask questions or just discussions, comments. We welcome that. Ivy, thank you very much, Ivy. Cordless mic, please, to my left and the back. Thanks, Ivy, for kicking off the discussions. Who's your question for or comment? The government. All right. Nice one, Ivy. Okay, the government team. Government and opposition.
I like Martin's last point about creating something. Listening to the speakers this week, I gathered that you were talking about constructivism approach to learning. Means kids have to create something to learn for themselves. But today's debate, I felt you were going against that. To me, it was a contradiction. Because in research, we expected to create something, to know that you have learned something. That's what I learned this week. And my question is, isn't it a contradictory to say, expect for us as facilitators or teachers to teach the kids to create something for themselves and bring OER to reinvent the wheel when they should be going forward to do something for themselves, to know that they have learned something. So that is a question to the government.
It's a very good question, but it's a good example of confused thinking. What we do with education is, as you all know, sometimes the best teachers can teach with anything. They can take the kids out of the classroom, go down to the beach, and find something to give a lesson about. They can find inspiration from talking about trees and the insects that grow on the trees. They can look at the shapes of leaves in the street. They can pick up stones from the beach and describe stories that bring imagination to the children and allow you to teach. An OER, and I would include photographs from other people. I would include journal articles that are free on the web. I would include television programs, a whole variety of things there that lend themselves to educational use. These are tools, and we now have a range of tools that surpasses our wildest imaginations when we were smaller. These OER are there for the taking. The trouble is, just now, because it's so new, is to correctly identify and find what you're looking for quickly. But if you realize that that resource is there, we can now focus on actually finding how to sort through these things and find the relevant things quicker. Once you've found them, it doesn't interfere at all with the creative process of using them for education. It means that you have a wider range of tools available to use.
Thank you very much. Frank, any other comments, or someone want to respond to this? Can I start moving over to the negative side to respond to what Frank has said? Thank you very much.
I think use of small things can encourage constructivism. There's nothing wrong with trying to encourage your students to create multimedia things, like create a YouTube video and things. But I think you're quite right. One of the problems with the kind of big OER approach is that it's this big course. Take this big chunk. This is how to teach it. This is how it's done. That's kind of the disagreement I was having with Tony Bates. He was saying, if I was doing this, I would say, here's the talk. Now here is the activity you will do and stuff. And I think you don't want to be specifying at that kind of level. So I'm happy for people to take bits and bobs and share. And you see this great outpouring of creativity in places like YouTube. People are creating stuff that you'd never knew they would. So there's a great song on there, for instance, where someone's made a whole song by just taking samples of other YouTube clips they've put together. And it's brilliant, you know, it's really creative. But that's not, education wouldn't let them do that and wouldn't reward that process. And an OER approach would say, you know, here's 20 hours on understanding music, you know, and that's the way you will understand it and teach it. So I think there is something in what you say that it's quite a didactic approach, I think.
Thank you very much, Martin. Anybody else from the audience want to make a comment or a question? I might remind you, it's just going on to 10, and I quite like the idea raised by Mohammed, and in fact affirmed by Mohammed, who said that you know, nothing's free, and I'm not taking sides here. I just this leading into my next point. From what I've just heard, I think we have to earn our morning tea. Thank you very much, Mohammed. And morning tea is not scheduled until 10:30, and we're just getting on to 10 o'clock. So, you know, this debate, what we had wanted to happen is, you know, a great exchange of ideas and discussions, and even debating with the audience as well. So, you know, I'm sure there's lots of things you want. I mean, even from what I saw, there are a whole heap of things, heap of issues that have been raised by what our colleagues this morning in the two teams debated and tried to defend and also try to put out to us, try to convince us with. So please ask some questions, throw your ideas into the discussion. Otherwise, you might have to just settle for your bottle of water.